I was hoping that we could, where it's been so long since we had our last meeting, July 16th, I'd love if we could approve those minutes and get them posted. They were distributed almost, I think about a week after that, but I wonder, and they were sent out for this with this meeting packet as well. So I wonder if there's a motion to approve the trust minutes of July 16th, 2024.
So moved.
Motion by Mike. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mary. Is there discussion? All right. So on that motion, we'll take a roll call vote. Mary,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Gary,
Yes.
Linda,
Yes.
Rich. I think you might have
Abstain, I wasn't there.
Okay, very good. And Keith, aye. So those minutes are approved. The housing, we'll have minutes at some future point for the Concord Housing Roundtable. We did on August 15th. We did have a quorum that was present there. And we will do a debrief tonight on the roundtable, just to bring folks up to speed on where we are. We've got a number of votes that we're looking to take tonight. One will be on a grant application to the Community Preservation Committee to fund the trust. We have 3 applications from the from the Concord Housing Development Corporation, rather, for grant applications that they filed with the trust for funding. And there may be other things that come up as well. So I think out of deference to Lee Smith's schedule, we'll move now to the agenda item 5, the Concord Housing Development Corporation. It's 3 grant applications. There was an agenda packet that went out with the meeting, and so we'll be taking up the items that were labeled in that packet as 5A, 1, 2, and 3. And the first one is Assabet River Bluff, which I'll just start off by, and let me say on each of these applications that are coming up, they're all currently listed in our housing production plan, a list of priorities, and we make the determination of when to act on applications based on when the projects are ready to proceed to some degree. So the trust had voted on July 16th to invite CHDC to submit an application to us for Assabet River Bluff, and we do now have that application for $1 million, and I'll turn it over to Lee to walk us through that request. And thanks for being here tonight.
Thanks for having me. I want to note Liz Rust is here from the RHSO, who acts as our CHDC's staff and does all the heavy lifting for us. So she prepared the applications and can probably speak better than I about any specifics about that. But just, I guess, with high level summary, CHDC awarded the project for Assabet River Bluff to Habitat for Humanity to build 3 new freestanding single family homes on the property adjacent to part of 406 Old Marlboro, where there's an existing 2-family. And the basic deal is that their proposal calls for a subsidy of exactly $1 million to enable that project to be built, and that's in combination with their typical model, which is donations of materials, donations of time, volunteers actually working on the house, both from the community, and in this instance, they want to use Minuteman Tech students, and anything else they can cobble together. So, but at the end of the day, there will be ideally a 3 very well-built, tight, energy efficient, fossil fuel free homes, 2 3-bedrooms and 1 4-bedroom, and that will also include site work, and it is being used in connection with, together with money that CHDC has allocated from other sources, which Liz can probably speak better than I. It's exactly what's coming from where. But so we're working with town council on starting the process to develop the condominium documents, the land development agreement, affordable housing restriction documents, and ideally put enough in place to enable Habitat to break ground this construction season, meaning before the snow flies, and that'll probably be limited to site clearing, but depending on the weather, potentially foundations, but I don't want to get anybody's hopes up. But we're all very excited for the project, and it's been a long time, but I'm calling it a win today. So happy to answer any questions.
Linda and then Mary.
Lee, this is terrific progress, and I know everyone's excited about it. Can you just remind me about the size of the units? And
Sure.
wasn't Habitat adapting a larger footprint than they usually do?
Yeah, thanks for asking that. So the Habitat model, if you will, the plans that they have on the shelf, so to speak, were for much smaller homes, and they proposed much smaller homes, like in the, maybe I want to say the 1,200 square foot range. And we thought that was really too small for what we were trying to accomplish here. So we asked them if they could potentially build one at 1,600 square feet, one at 1,700 square feet, and the 4-bedroom at 1,800 square feet. And they agreed to do that. So they'll be working, I don't know if they're going to be working directly with our architect, but based upon the drawings, which aren't construction level drawings yet, starting off that and working with their own architects to prepare architectural drawings that will enable those 3 homes to be built at those 3 sizes. And they were also excited to be able to have those size of homes in their library, if you will, for future projects. So they were excited about that.
And just to follow up, if I may, there was reference to if there was additional construction money or money that had been initially awarded by CPC, it would go back to CPC. However, if there was additional money awarded by the trust, it would go into a reserve. And if you could just speak to that briefly.
I might turn that one over to Liz.
Sure. I think it was not intended to read quite that way. I'm sorry if that's the way it came out. It was really intended for I think the $1 million was really just going into the Habitat portion of the project. It was really if there was extra money on the CPC side, that it could fund a reserve for the condominium, and then seeing how much was left, and maybe there would be additional that would be returned to the CPC depending. There are a number of expenses that are unestimated at this point that are needed to be spent out of that amount of money. So it's not exactly known how much would be left.
And just to be clear, we're working closely with the Concord Housing Authority, who's going to, they will own the duplex, those 2 units. And they're also, I think the current plan is for CHA to manage the homeowners association or condominium association going forward.
But it would start off with, you start off with some money in it, but there's enough, as I say, there's a number of expenses that are neither the housing authorities or the habitats that are part of the project. Like a fence that has to go between that and the neighbor, and, different parts that are really on the CHDC. And some of those are identified in the application. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mary, and then Rich.
Thanks, Keith. thank you for doing the work to get this to the point. I'll be glad to see the ground break there. I'm still disappointed that we didn't get more units at that property because it's such a perfect location, being close to the rail trail and in the West Concord Village. But today we'll celebrate the 5 that we did get. Can someone tell me at the end of the day, all of the sources of funds, how much are we spending per unit to get these on our inventory? If we were to
It's,
take all of the spending and then divide it by 5, I guess, and say
Yeah,
so what is it costing us to get these 5 on our
My-
SHI?
Yeah, my count, it was $1 million to acquire the property. That
Yep.
was the project cost. $500,000 in additional money has gone from CPC to CHDC. So
Yep.
that's 1.5. This would bring it to 2.5 million
Yep.
for 5 units, which would be 500,000 each.
For a brand new unit. Okay. Great. Thank you.
Thanks, Keith.
Rich and then Diane.
Yeah, I mean, and this is not necessarily opposition, but $1 million is a round number. Habitat, as I understand their model, does take a mortgage that the owners can afford. So there is some money coming back to them if there's a bank involved. I don't know. My question is,
They underwrite the mortgage themselves. There's no bank involved.
there's no bank, so the money just goes back to Habitat to build more units.
They don't actually give the money. It's not like a mortgage where they give the money to the homeowners. They underwrite the mortgage and they put it on their balance sheet, and the homeowners pay the monthly mortgage, but it's a balance sheet item for them.
Right, but so as they make mortgage payments, Habitat gets some money.
Yes, correct. And
Way
that's what they
below-
use.
Way
That's
below
what
what it was.
Yeah, yeah.
And my other question is, obviously, these are big units. On the other hand, it's Habitat. They do get contributed labor and materials to a certain extent. I'm sort of with Mary. I mean, 500,000, I understand when you look at the size of this, but 2 of those units already exist. Is there any tracking of cost? Would anything come back to us if those 3 units came in below $1 million? Or conversely, is Habitat on the hook if they come in over $1 million?
So I think the way that's going to be negotiated with Habitat now, but I think it's going to basically the $1 million is for the trades, because Habitat has to pay all the site work, right? They don't do that through volunteers, right? They have to pay actual contractor for some of their work, right? So the $1 million is actually going to be spent early on the side of the project. So a lot of the money is to clear the site and to do the septic systems and all that sort of early work. And then your other question is whether there would be monies coming back if they over fundraise. I think that would be.
I mean, however they do it, if it,
Yeah.
If it comes in under $1 million, which, in effect, we're subsidizing the house. We're not buying the entire thing and giving it to
That's
the
entirely
housing.
reasonable, and I think that the CHDC can work that into the LDA, but it's really, I think that, the thought was that it would be neither, the other side of that is if it costs more, that the town would put up more, right? Like if you get back the other side, if they cost less, you get back money or this, but I think that that's to be negotiated. I think that if it comes in less,
Well, that's the other side of my question.
Mhm.
Is Habitat on the hook if they can't bring it in for $1
Yes.
million plus
Yeah.
contributions?
Yes.
They
So
are. Okay.
That's the risk reward side of
Yeah,
this
I got
equation. So they're assuming the risk, but they would be reaping any benefit, which
Yeah.
I'd be surprised if there was any, but.
Yeah, so I mean, and Habitat subsidy is half the subsidy of the other proposal that was received. So, you know, it's substantially less.
And
Okay.
we've also got, as most of you know, very good track record with Habitat, both on Commonwealth Avenue most recently, and then the CHDC project on 930 Main Street.
Yeah, so.
Thanks. Diane Proctor.
You're muted, Diane.
I know, I'm trying to get my little thing to work. Thank you. So there was a mention about CPC having some, I'm sorry if I misunderstood it, some other monies. Could somebody specify that for me? Because I don't think I quite understood.
Yeah,
This is
that was
monies
fu-
that, this was monies that the CPC appropriated for this project a couple of years ago.
Oh, okay, thank you. So it's not new monies that
No.
we're talking.
No,
Thank
it's
you.
monies that the CHDC is already expensing against.
Thank you, Liz. I'm trying to take careful notes. And I thought, wait, okay,
Exactly,
sorry to
exactly.
misunderstand. I'll go back to being quiet.
Thanks,
It's a good
Diane.
question.
Stephanie.
Yeah, I don't have a question as much as I have a quick comment, and it relates to homeownership. This is now, you know, I think an important step for us. I know we did that with the ComAv house, but renting versus homeownership, I'm all for owning your home. Just wanted to say that.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Are there further questions? All right. I had prepared a draft motion, which was in the packet, and if for those that are able might want to just follow along. But I'll just say the proposed motion is for someone to move that the trust vote pursuant to our funding guidelines to approve CHDC's application for $1 million. And I'd specify that's 500,000 in CPA funds and 500,000 in non-CPA funds. Sidebar, not part of the motion. We only have $500,000 in CPA funds remaining. So this would use all of them. For development of 3 new affordable units at Riverside, Assabet River Homes, 406 Old Marlborough Road, pursuant to Housing Production Plan Strategy Number 1, and further to authorize the chair to execute a grant agreement with CHDC subject to approval as to form by town council.
So moved.
Second,
Motion by Rich, second by Mike. And under discussion, I'll just say that we're aware that the previous funding that the trust did for this project involved a mortgage, which can be which is still out there and needs to be addressed. There are 3 there for each of the 5 units that would come online. 1/5 of the mortgage amount would be forgiven at that point. It sounds like I'm sure that we'll be pleased to work with the CHDC and the Housing Authority, who will be taking over respectively 3 and 2 units, and the 3 units on their way over to Habitat, so that we're mindful of that mortgage instrument, and if there's anything that seems like we need to amend with that unit as part of this agreement, that let's talk about that.
Yeah, I'll be dusting that off, but I would anticipate partial mortgage discharges as each of the units comes online with the affordable housing restriction.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. And then I don't think the CHA would be responsible for the condominium association while those mortgages were in place. I think that they would be relieved before that.
Right, so we'll be happy to work on that timeframe. When we adopted that mortgage instrument, it was, you know, the future of this property was very uncertain, and there's a lot more certainty that's filled out over the last couple of years. So let's take advantage of what we know now compared to what we didn't know back then. So if there, yes, Linda.
You know, that all makes sense, and I assume that'll come back to the trust as this gets further delineated.
Yeah, I'd like to bring the final form of the instruments that we have back here for the trust review.
You mean the grant agreement?
Well, we're
Well,
talking, yeah, we're talking
about a mortgage as well. If
Would you put a new mortgage on this, these properties? Is that what you're thinking?
no, I'm not thinking. I'm trying not to. I'm trying to be open to whatever thoughts need to be put in before us about how we should approach this. And whatever that is, we'll come back to the full trust and explain ourselves. So
if it pleases this body and the town manager, like I said earlier, we've started to work with town council on how to best make this deal run. We can make sure they have those documents from a few years ago, meaning the mortgage and note, and ask for their assistance or recommendation on how best to deal with that going forward, just as a suggestion.
sounds like a great idea for a great proposal to ask the town manager.
I have my monthly meeting with town council tomorrow, and I will be sure to address this with him.
Thanks.
Great, thanks very much. All right, I think we're ready for a vote on the motion. So I'll do the call the roll on that motion. Mary Hartman,
Yes.
Mike Lawson,
Yes.
Linda Escobedo,
yes,
Rich Feely,
Aye.
Gary LaFleur,
Yes.
and Keith Bergman. Aye. So that is a unanimous vote.
Thank you.
And thanks very much. And thanks to the CHDC and Lee and Liz for bringing the project this far. It's a huge amount of progress that's been made in the last several months in particular. Thanks also to the Housing Authority, without whom we couldn't have pulled this off. So thank you.
Truly great. work.
Since you're thanking people, let's thank the open space groups who
Yes.
helped buy the 5 acres that came with the
Land-
pack.
Land trust.
Yes.
That's right. It's right. That's right.
They were instrumental in pulling this together, so they have
it's a
my
great-
thanks at least.
Right, and it's a great example of what a town can do. I mean, there'll be a lot of, and did I not say the Community Preservation Committee, who is, I think, put in the second largest amount of money on the table compared to the trust. So thanks to
Thanks to
very
everybody.
yes, everyone. And it's all it's all paid for by the voters and taxpayers of Concord. So thank you all that are watching. We have 2 more applications to come up. And so let's move to the next one, the CHDC's request for pre-development funding for Junction Village. And this was also a request that we've talked about for $50,000 in pre-development funds and Lee.
Thanks. So long story short, as everyone knows, MCI Concord closed at the end of June. DCAM, representing the state, has begun in earnest all their due diligence and studying of the current status of, let's just call it 51 acres of state-owned former prison land. CHDC owns roughly 12.8 acres directly abutting that, contiguous with the prison land. CHTC decided to pause a request for proposals to develop that land, with the idea being that it might make more sense to consider that 12 plus acres in connection with the 51 as perhaps, with a master planning effort to make it an overall better project. The legislation that was enacted at the end of July, I want to say,
Yes.
included money for the state and the town to expend on the 51 acres, but silent on the CHTC owned property. So the idea here is that the $50,000 would be available to CHTC to do whatever pre-development activities may be necessary or appropriate in parallel with the efforts on the other side of the fence, so to speak, so that we're marching in the same line and not caught behind, and et cetera, and as we continue to decide how if and how those parcels might work better together for future development, which remains to be seen.
Mary?
Thanks, Keith. So I think I'd like to have a better understanding of exactly what work we expect to get done for the 50,000. Who would do that work? What are we doing with the money? What do we expect that we would do with that money?
It's a good question. I could ask the same question to the President Advisory Board about the 475. I'm not quite sure what we're going to do with that either, but
I have some ideas on that.
the short answer is I think we don't really know. There's a lot of environmental due diligence that was done by prior developers. There could be peer review of that. We don't know yet what kind of, or at least I don't know yet what kind of studies the town and or the state will be doing across the fence. But we want to be ready, willing, and able, and we're able to contract directly outside of the procurement policies of the town once it's decided what the money is needed for. And similar to other projects, if we don't spend it, we can give it back. But we didn't want to get caught flat-footed with zero money to be able to do pre-development work if and when it arises.
I'm also wondering about the timing, given that that DCAM hasn't taken conveyance of that property, and I don't think they expect to for at least a year, while the Mass DOC does work there to find out about any salvage value. So I'm a little bit hesitant.
We're in no rush.
Yeah, exactly. We're in no rush. The 475,000 has been approved by the legislature, and I think we've got a lot of ideas about how we could spend that, especially on community outreach. And I don't think Junction Village needs to do any of that on its own. So I'm still a little bit concerned about what exactly we'd spend this money for, and if this is premature.
We don't have any identified plans for it as of today, but the idea was just being ready to go if a need arose.
Yeah, I guess I'll call on I will call on Rich and then Diane in just a moment. I want to make the comment at this point that to the extent that the town currently right now has $475,000 it's authorized to spend on planning. And if anyone believes that money can only be spent on the 51 acres, I think there should be some, and we think it's a good idea for the town, for the entire 63 acre parcels to be planned together. That one way to show that is by saying, well, the town has its funds to look at the 51 acres. The trust has other funds that it can use to tap for the 12.8 acres. So as those things are proceeding together, I think it would send an important message from the town that we want to, or at least the housing groups have talked about it. We like Junction Village to be would like to follow CHDC's lead and have Junction Village be the future, its future plotted in connection with the future of MCI Concord next door. Rich, and then Diane, and then Carrie.
Guys, I'm really sorry. I have to go to this 5:30. I'm sorry, but Liz is well briefed and can carry on. I'm happy to answer any follow-up questions.
Thank you, Lee. Thanks so much.
Thank you all very much.
I'm in favor of this because my concern is that unless we have some money on the table and push our interest in affordable housing at Junction Village, nothing will happen until well into the building of whatever comes out of MCI, which is years away. There are things that will have to be worked out. Can we use their, sewage system? Can we get a right of way that's consistent with whatever they do with Route 2, but deals with Winthrop Street? I mean, it seems, is 50,000 the right number? I don't know. But I want CHDC to be able to move forward without waiting for the, destruction of the buildings on the existing site, whichever ones are going to go, and everything that's associated with it. I mean, we've already sat on this site for over 10 years, and I think we need to give CHDC some money so that they can, if you will, harmonize with what the town's doing with MCI, but not be, a prisoner of what happens with MCI and wait for years before they can do something. Thanks.
Thanks, Diane, and then Carrie, and then Stephanie.
I defer to Mike and Carrie, who are on the committee. I'll make a comment after that. Keith, if that's all right.
Sure. Carrie?
Sure, thanks. My comments are actually not a whole lot different than what Rich just expressed. I'm not opposed to earmarking this funding for CHDC, but I am concerned with moving ahead and in advance of anything that the town is doing, because the two major issues from my perspective, as Rich said, are access and sewer treatment. And both of those things are going to come, or I assume both of those things are going to come through the MCI Concord property. I would assume we're not looking to do any large on-site septic now that we have the potential of the prison wastewater treatment. So I'm just concerned about the timing and spending money in a way that may not be consistent with what the town through the advisory committee recommends.
I'll call on Mike next.
Thank you, Keith. Carrie's made the point I wanted to make. I'm all in favor of supporting this. I'm not sure 50,000 is the right amount of money, but I don't want us to get out ahead of the town. And is there some way that we could pass some kind of motion of some kind indicating our support for this without actually allocating the money?
Yes.
And because, we can get together and allocate this money at the drop of a hat. It's not like it's a big bureaucracy that we have to contend with. So I'd rather see us develop a motion that supports CHDC's efforts and encourages them to come back to us with specific needs that they might have to further this project. So that's my 2 cents.
Thanks, Mike. And that sounds like it is a good direction to head. Let's see, those, I have 3 hands up, and so like trying to recall I've forgotten who's next.
I can say very quickly, Keith, that Mary mentioned monies to try to communicate the MCI. And the league has already met with people in town hall, and we will be holding a series of forums, one at the very least rather soon, to try to help with the communication in the town about MCI and how it's going forward. That's all I wanted to say. And otherwise, again, will be quiet. So.
Thank you. Stephanie and then Liz.
Yeah, I guess my question relates to the harmonizing piece. Like, how do the two pieces come together? Timing, we've talked about. Not sure how that timing will work with the advisory committee and what we're looking to do with CHDC's, overall game plan. I guess my question is more related to how do you formalize those two things? And is it important to formalize it sooner? So, for example, does the advisory committee have a housing component to it? Is there something about that advisory team that Concord is a part of with the state that helps formalize the conversation around housing and includes CHDC as early as possible? Then we know how those dollars will be spent. That's just my question.
There are two CHDC members, Lee Smith and Peter Lowett, who are on the town's MCI Concord Advisory board. So they're joined at the hip.
Great.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure of participation.
Yeah. Liz and then Mary.
Yeah, so I think the idea was really not that the CHDC was going to go off and start to, do any contracting or feasibility, but it was just to be sure that everyone involved knew that there was monies available, so that as scope was being defined for the other, the MCI proper parcel, like as things were being defined there, that it could be expanded to include this property without any additional expense on the 475. It was really that kind of simple. And it is, it is early, and maybe it's too early, but you never know, like when, I don't know, like when that exactly is going to happen. So, for example, I'll just throw this out, but again, the timing's probably not right. Like you're going to do some master plan, right? And you're going to hire some planner, and you're going to say, well, here's the land. And they say, well, we're going to include this piece now, the CHDC piece. The CHDC piece is important because it borders the river there. So you have the riverfront, and then you have the access there. So that, like it's an important part of the property part. But so to include it in the overall site planning, like if you will, the master plan, like you would want to know that up front. And you'd say, well, that expands the scope, so it's going to be a bigger project. And you say, oh, but we have this money that we could use from the CHDC side for that part of the project, right? And then you could just rope that in. So that was sort of one kind of sort of more practical kind of thought about making sure that it was considered from the very early part as part of the overall planning structure. So when's the right time? I don't know when the right time is, but it's good to know that the money's there when needed. If this is too early, something, but sometimes then it gets to be a little too late, and I don't know, right?
Yeah. Thanks for that that response, Liz. And I really think it captures that that the idea is simply to have money is for the trust to say there is money on the table that the CHDC will be able to avail itself from at whatever appropriate time the town starts spending money on for the planning of the 51 acres. That because the hope would be that the 12.8 acres next door would be included in that scope at whatever time.
Right,
so maybe the way for us
earliest part, from the very
yeah.
earliest
So
part.
maybe all we do is we vote to budget $50,000 for this purpose, with subject to, and that we will invite the CHDC to submit a particular funding request at the point that the project is ready to proceed. And the town, it sounds like, and I'm a little unclear, is that the town itself, or is it the MCI Concord Advisory Committee, or who's going to be spending who's committing the $475,000, and at what point to procure consultants and so on? Because whatever that timetable is, I think is the timetable that the trust funds would be used for. Mary?
Thanks, Keith. As someone who's been attending every MCI advisory board meeting and has biweekly con calls with DCAM and wrote the charge and appointed the people, I want to give you some insights on what I've learned. First of all, you have to understand that DCAM is very, very focused on housing at that site. And they're also looking at, even though the money that we've been awarded or enabled is restricted to the 51 acres, DCAM is taking a much broader look. So they're looking at things like Route 2, they're looking at Warner's Pond, they're looking at the river, they're looking at what's the impact to the West Concord Village, and they're looking at Junction Village. So they're not restricting their thinking to just the 51 acres, even though it appears, I'm not even clear that the 475 is restricted to the 51 acres. Right now, I think we're playing it safe and saying it is, but that's something we could push a little bit harder on. So I just wanted to reassure people that housing is definitely high on the list of priorities. You know, the Healy administration is very, that's their priority. And that the DCAM team is looking much broader than just the acres. I think that, and we have two people on the MCI advisory board, as you said, Keith, that are strong advocates for housing here in Concord, and they're very respected members of that board. So, I think that giving a signal to them that the CHDC is very interested in this and we want to integrate Junction Village with whatever's planned there is something. And I liked Mike's idea of, and then let's wait and see if what we need the money for and if we even need the money, and have them come back and tell us what that would be spent for. That would be my preference. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks,
Can
Mary.
I try a motion? Can I try a motion?
Yeah, I'm gonna make one suggestion though, and it's that perhaps we should frame it into, there's an opportunity coming up a week from Thursday for public input at DCAM's public hearing, and it might not, and it seems to me that might be an appropriate, the most appropriate time for a communication from the trust be entered into the record that says we support the inclusion planning for the future of Junction Village to be incorporated in the MCI Concord study, and we've set aside a budget of $50,000 to that could be drawn from when the need arises to engage particular services. Maybe that's an approach.
Yeah, that's sort of what I was going to say, is something along the lines of, in order to facilitate collaboration between CHDC as the proprietor of Junction Village property and the MCI task force, we are prepared, subject to specific funding requests, to provide money from a reserve fund of $50,000. Again, what I'm worried about is pushing, if we don't have money to be at the table and say, okay, you don't think you want to lay out a road that'll get to the Junction Village property, we need to be able to play there. And maybe they'll be agreeable and maybe they won't. But I come back to the fact that I want us to be able to collaborate, but also not to be held, whatever we do should be compatible with the plan, but it doesn't have to wait for every other element of the plan. So that's why we would enable the money. That's way too long. So, I guess
Right.
what I would, having written the preamble, I would simply move that we reserve up to $50,000 to be made available, subject to further request from CHDC to collaborate in the MCI planning process in order to include the Junction Village property.
Thanks for
Second.
that motion.
Second.
Motion by Rich, second by Mary. And
Excuse me for interrupting. Did we have a motion on the floor?
no,
not that I'm aware of.
Okay, thank you.
No,
Keith, could I have a friendly amendment just
Sure.
to clarify that that $50,000 is non-CPA funds as you had in your
Yeah.
original?
yeah,
Thank
yeah,
you.
to 50,000 in non-CPA funds, yes.
Because that enables us to work on plans for higher, for workforce housing. Yeah, great.
And I also asked for clarification here. I understand the motion. I'm supportive of the motion and the friendly amendment. But that is different than announcing at DCAM's meeting, public meeting, that we've got $50,000 for this project.
Well,
And I just want to,
Linda, as soon as we hopefully approve this, I was going to suggest a second motion,
okay,
which
good.
was to authorize the chair to represent the trust at the DCAM meeting on September 12th, indicating our support for this effort.
For the joint effort, but that's not declaring the amount of money, et cetera.
And that we've
Well-
set money aside. Yeah.
If,
That
if
we
we,
would declare.
if we're saying 50,000 in the motion, so it's not going to be secret.
Yeah.
Well, I'm a little, sorry.
But
Go
let's
ahead.
vote on the primary motion and then see if we can figure out the next approach to getting our support of this activity and our allocation of money before DCAM at the meeting on the 12th.
Okay, so let's try to see on the motion and that's been made and seconded to reserve up to 50,000 for this project, subject to our and I'm gonna have to watch the video after this, but we will have the text of the motion. Are we ready to vote on that motion?
I am.
All right.
And,
then we'll-
and I accept Linda's friendly amendment. that
Yeah,
Yeah.
Carrie's,
Reserve up
But
50,000
not
non-CPA funds.
right. Very good. So on that motion, with that edit, I'll do a roll call. Mary,
Yes.
Mike,
Yep.
Linda,
Aye,
Rich,
Aye.
Carrie,
Aye.
and Keith, aye. So that vote passes 6-0. Thanks. Mike, did you want to offer an additional motion?
Yes, I move that the trust authorize the chair to at the DCAM meeting on September 12th to represent our allocation of these funds to support the CDC effort, CHDC effort. That's probably not the exact language we should have in there, but
Is there a second to that motion?
that was Mary.
It was
No,
Mary.
Okay.
no,
Oh, no.
that was me just moaning or something, I don't know.
Okay. I'll second it.
Okay, motion by Mike, second by Rich. Further discussion. Mary,
Yeah, Linda's comment has got me thinking now about the distinction between reserving, allocating, budgeting. So I thought the motion we approved a few minutes ago was basically saying, we've got this money set aside, and if CHDC comes to us with specific needs, that we have some money earmarked for it, but we would still have to hear what those specific needs are. Is that correct?
That's
Yes.
that's what I intended.
yes, that's correct.
Okay, so I guess I would be okay with this motion if we were specific about that, whatever we announce at the DCAM forum. That it matters to me. So it's not a blank check, really. It's
Right,
we've got
right. The
this money-
motion would be to report on that vote.
Okay.
to what our vote was. And I'll just say for full disclosure, for full disclosure, I'm planning on attending the meeting, that public hearing in person. I'm planning on speaking and this and reporting on this vote isn't all I'm going to say,
Well,
because I've been waiting for a long time to say something to somebody, and this is the first. And
but on this
and,
matter, you'll be speaking on behalf of
on
the
this matter, I'm speaking on behalf of the trust. And further, I think it would be a good opportunity to inform DCAM, who's our audience, that we're planning to amend the housing production plan to update or do an update to make that a more up-to-date document there, and that's it. So on the motion, oh, Liz, you have your hand up?
I just wanted to clarify, when the CHDC wants to spend some money, does it need to come back and apply again?
Yes,
Thank you.
yes, because it would be for a specific
Yes.
expense, which will need to be coordinated with whatever the town is specifically engaged. And I think the example that you gave, Liz, was just right on point, that
Yeah.
if there's a consultant that presumably the town is hiring to look at the 51 acres, and the only reasonable thing is to expand the scope to include
Yeah. Yeah,
additional
I
12.
get that. I'm just wondering about process. So it would be another grant application with narrative and then grant agreement. And before spending.
Yeah,
right?
there won't be any, there's no grant, there won't be any grant agreement in place on this until we,
No, but coming back, so it's
Yeah.
not quite as nimble as you say, right? Because it takes.
well,
that's-
it's not, but you've heard
Just to be
that
clear,
the
just to be clear.
leash is going to be shorter.
Yeah, just to be
So-
clear, that's all.
And that's consistent with all of
Mm-hmm.
the allocations of funds that we made, which I think
Yeah.
is.
Yeah. Okay, so on Mike's motion, seconded by Rich, authorizing the chair to report on at that public hearing on the previous motion. Is there further discussion? All right, so on that motion, roll call, Mary,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes,
Linda,
Yes.
Carrie,
Yes.
Rich,
Aye.
and Keith, aye. So that passes 6-0. Thank you. Thanks very much. It's, I want to go back to, and thanks, Liz, for all the work that you, oh, wait a minute, we have one more for Liz. We have $25,000 for the small grant program. And we'll, and I would remind the group that back on November 7th of 2023, the trust voted to fund the first 2 years of the small grant program, with the knowledge that every year the CHDC would be coming back to us to add another year on to the end of that. So what we have in front of us tonight is a request for a third year, $25,000, and we have a report. We have an application request which included a status report of how the funds have been spent to date. And anything you want to say about that request, Liz?
Just that the CHDC is very grateful for the support. Otherwise, the program would be terminated because there is no funding for that. And with the $25,000, 6 grants were committed for, I think, 22,600, something like that. So almost the whole 25 for a year's worth of funding. So an extra
Right.
year funding allows the program to continue because it's a long cycle between commitment and pay.
Right. And I was impressed to see in the application materials that this is the the project's been going on for 11 years
Mhm.
now and have committed over $200,000 in funds for income eligible homeowners. So, and we use non-CPA funds for this grant. So are there questions that folks have about this third grant application? All right, so I would suggest a motion that the trust vote pursuant to our funding guidelines to approve CHDC's application for $25,000 in non-CPA funds to continue for a third year CHDC small grant program for qualifying eligible income eligible units as described in Housing Production Plans Strategy number 14, and to authorize the chair to execute a grant agreement with CHDC subject to town council's approval as to form. Someone like to make that motion?
So
So
moved,
moved,
seconded.
simultaneous with Mike.
Right, we'll give that motion by Mike. I'll take Rich's utterance to be a second. Is there discussion? All right, so roll call vote on that motion. Mary,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes,
Linda,
Yes,
Rich,
Aye.
Harry,
Yes,
and Keith, aye. So that is approved 6-0. Thanks very much. I want to go back to item 4, which is time sensitive, and that is the funding of the fiscal 2026 community preservation funding round, and a proposal for the trust to submit an application for $740,000 to continue to implement housing production plan priority projects. We've talked about this this approach at a number of recent meetings, came up at the Housing Roundtable. The idea is for the trust to seek $500,000 in fiscal 2026 CPA funds, plus the $240,000 in fiscal 21 CPA funds that were turned back for the 376 Com Ave project, the Giroux House done by Habitat. That the housing groups have expressed support for this as we've talked with them. The Housing Authority voted to support it on August 25th. CHDC takes it up at their next meeting, and Housing Foundation, Rich, is taking it up on September 11th at their next meeting, so that we can have letters of support accompanying it. And so I had circulated a draft of that grant application. I took last year's grant application and edited it so it didn't take nearly as long to produce this one this year. But I did want to highlight some of the things that are proposed in that grant application. First is that I'm trying to take a cue here from the select board's goal to have a more diversification in our housing stock by having us apply for the funds for community housing purposes, which would allow up to 100% of area median income. That, by the way, is what this Community Preservation Act defines as community housing. Our two grant applications with the CPC to date have limited us to what they call affordable community housing, which they've defined as 80% of AMI. part of that was that we were all keeping our eye on the particular ball of getting above 10% and staying above there. Since we're above 10%, we arguably need not have every unit that we create be at 80% of AMI and therefore countable. We've looked at strategies to add other units that are higher than 80%, including CHDC units at Junction Village, which would be up to 150%. Those couldn't not be funded with the CPA funds, by the way. But that we do have a breakdown that was in the presentation made to the roundtable that showed that there are a number of units that are deed restricted between 50% and 150% of AMI, and so and not all of those are countable. But if we did want to pursue something higher than 80%, I think we should say so in the request. The other thing I'd wanted to just call attention to is that in listing potential uses of the funds in future years, what would the program look like? We have not talked about one of the items that I've put in as a placeholder, and I think it's worthy of discussion, and that is the Peabody Middle School town surplus property, which I'll say if I would have raised it at the August 15th housing roundtable if I had focused on how imminent it's being declared surplus was. It did come up at the chair's breakfast on the 21st. I think that's the first time I heard about it when the school committee chair mentioned it. So and the Peabody Middle School building is identified in the Housing Production Plan Strategy 3 by name as a project that we should pursue. So since we're preparing an application to CPC on what funds might be spent on, I wanted to at least raise the issue of putting in Peabody Middle School as something that's on our radar screen. We haven't had a full discussion about it. I think it warrants a full discussion if the town is going to be inviting proposals at some point, that we have as full an understanding as we can of what this property would entail if it were to be pursued for housing. So those are the main things that I wanted to call to your attention out of that grant, and welcome your comments. Linda.
Keith, thanks for all your work putting this together. And, I appreciate when you commented about the update. In this particular application to CPC, and also in other documents, whether we presented them at the Housing Roundtable or other places, we refer to the fiscal year 2026 for the CPA funding. And in fact, that is correct, because the votes that they take are to approve the money is for the following year. But I wish we could always pair that nomenclature with simultaneously with the fact that it would be voted on at the FY25 town meeting fiscal year. And this is important because when you go back and look at these documents, it becomes very confusing. Do you understand the point I'm trying to make here?
Well, I do. I have to check up all the time that when I say fiscal 25, I in fact mean the 2024 annual town meeting.
Right.
And I catch myself all the time, that,
And I think I'm concerned not only for ourselves in terms of tracking all this, but also the continuing to get public support for what we're trying to accomplish here and their understanding. So that's why I'm encouraging to raise our awareness about trying to pair these two dates almost all
Right.
the
yeah,
time.
yeah, to specify the town meeting, as well as the fiscal year.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
But thanks for all your work on this.
Thank you. Carrie?
So at the risk of saying the most unpopular thing today, I understand that Peabody is listed in the housing production plan as a potential site for housing. I understand that there is a constituency that will be interested specifically in affordable housing at the Peabody. There was also a lot of discussion as we were going through the middle school funding project about the town, if it was to dispose of Peabody, to get the most money out of that property to help offset the cost of the middle school. And so I just feel that listing it as a future, which is the same category as Junction Village, which we all know at some point will be developed for housing, is just, it's a little too far for me, given where we are with the discussion of the disposition of Peabody.
Thanks, Carrie. I appreciate your bringing that up. Rich?
Yeah, I understand Carrie's concern, but I see this as an option to do something for the excluded middle, which means that we get some money, but not the money we would get if what was built were 5,000 square foot houses, which is what we know the market would build if it could. But rather that the town would specify, we want X units, we want them of no greater than Y size. Maybe we even do a PRD so that we can have more than one unit in a building, and we let those go at market, but we take less than the maximum amount. We still get money. We get as much as a builder will give us if we stipulate this is what you will build and sell. The problem we have at the moment in this town is that the small housing we have, which would be workforce or even middle class, gets torn down when it's sold. And the only way to get new construction that's small is to take the leverage of town ownership and say, yeah, we want a private developer here, but you're going to develop smaller units. So I fully respect what Carrie's saying about, people want to maximize money, but I think there's a way to get money for the town without, having to give the site away. Thanks.
Mary?
Thanks, Keith. First of all, I want to thank you, Keith, for putting community housing in the CPC application as opposed to, I guess, what they call housing, but increasing the 80% to 100%. That was an important catch. So thank you for putting that in. As far as the Peabody goes, the select board is going to be issuing letters of interest to developers in, I think, sometime maybe the November timeframe, to just kind of get a feel for what is the interest in the market. This doesn't commit us at all, but it does give us some information going forward. Speaking now with my select board hat, I'll have to say that we recently took a tour of the DPW and the public safety buildings, and it was an eye-opener for me how much we need to address this long-standing capital. And so any money that we can get from the sale of that land, I think, would go a long way towards helping defray the huge capital costs for these. So I hear what Rich is saying. Yes, we want to get we want to talk with developers and get housing that we want. And hopefully we can, thread this needle so that we get what we want, but also getting the money that the town badly needs in order to make some capital improvements in our public safety and our DPW. Thank you.
Thanks, Mary. Diane?
Thank you, Keith. I have to concur with what Mary said. The town has so many needs right now, doesn't it? Surely, I think Rich's comment is really prescient and important, that middle income housing is really sorely missing in this town. If you look at costs, there are very few things at 500, 600, 700,000. You just jump to almost 2,000 again and again and again. So if there were a way to do, to create moderate income housing, and I hate to think of 700,000 as being moderate, since I grew up in a very different era. But I mean, I do think that, this is a big issue in town, and we hear it all the time about older people who are trying to downsize and can't find a place to do so. In Concord itself. But the second comment, so Rich, thank you for your sensitivity on that issue. But the other thing I just want to say is that we really do have structural needs in terms of that Mary has mentioned, in terms of the DPW and other things. And I think that those claims will be broad and strong as we go forward. So I don't know how they'll be adjudicated, but I do think they're going to be important, and we need to be, we meaning those who care deeply about housing, and also those those oncoming costs need to be sensitive to that. And maybe Mary and you all know how they'll be adjudicated, but I think it's going to be an interesting discourse. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Yeah, I think that from that there's an important town policy direction for the select board and the administration to give us, and what we pursue. There are lots of, well, I'll just say it, that there perhaps the town's best strategy, if you have surplus town properties, is to sell it and cash in so that you can meet other needs. If that's so, then that would seem like the only other free property is MCI Concord, where you might put where the housing needs could be addressed. So, but that's sort of, that's a huge town-wide decision to be made, and so I think it's important for the trust and other town boards and commissions to take their cues from whatever overall goals are set by the select board and the administration, so that because our board is just looking at one issue, and you're looking at everything, and we all want to be moving in the same direction at the same time. So what I would take that to mean is let's leave out, for the time being, for the purposes of this grant application to CPC, I will not put in the Peabody Middle School, lest that confuse people, and that this board, along with other town entities, will be following what is happening with the select board as that property proceeds, and if there should come an opportunity for us to jump in, we'll be ready. And but for the very limited purpose of what I'm raising tonight is, what do we put in a grant application to say is, here's a list of things we might do, that we don't have to put all the mights in there. We can leave one out. And so let's leave out Peabody Middle School, and we'll discuss it in the future. So is there any further discussion on this grant application? All right, and this is the reason we're meeting, I should say. It's the reason that we're having a meeting, was why we were going to meet in August, and now we're in early September, so that we can meet Diane's deadline of the end of next week for grant applications. So, all right, so the motion that I would ask is for the trust to authorize the chair to submit on the trust's behalf a grant application to the Community Preservation Committee for $740,000 in community housing funds, for the trust to continue to implement housing production plan priority production projects, said sum representing $500,000 in FY26 CPA funds, plus the $240,000 in unused FY21 CPA funds for 367 Commonwealth Ave, returned by the Concord Housing Authority, so those funds can continue to be used for community housing purposes. That's my motion.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Rich, second by Mary. And I will make that edit that was discussed just now and take out the reference to the middle school, Peabody Middle School. All right, are we ready for a vote?
Will that include the former discussion we had about pairing the town meeting date?
Yes, and I will, when I speak of the fiscal year, I will clarify that it's the date of the of the annual town meeting.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. All right, so on that motion, I'll call roll call vote. Mary,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Linda,
Yes.
Rich,
Aye.
Carrie,
Yes.
and Keith, aye. So that passes unanimously. Thanks. Thanks very much. There are plenty of other things on the agenda that we can take up at another time. You've all been very patient to take up these matters. I will ask if there is any public comment. All right. Yes, Mary.
Thanks, Keith. And the upcoming events, I just wanted to add that the Select Board and the Finance Committee is having a tour of 2229 Main Street tomorrow, which is another property that we should, as housing groups, should keep in our sites. We're having a site visit tomorrow at 3:30. It's an open meeting, so anybody is free to come and join us. And the 2229 Reuse Committee is presenting their results of their work to the Select Board in October. So that's something you want to keep in view.
Absolutely. And thank you for that, because that's also a named property in our housing production plan. And when it's ready to proceed, that we'll want to pounce on that too, I'm sure. So
Good.
Thank you.
Good.
Thanks for the invitation to tomorrow. And we have on our radar screen the September 30th public forum that the Select Board will have on the residential tax exemption. So thanks for doing that.
Thank you.
Okay, and our next meeting of the trust, do we want to pick a time for a month from now? How does Tuesday, October 1st look? At 5 p.m.
Yes.
Tuesday, October 1st. Okay, very good. So let's go with that date and thanks very much. And ready for a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Moved by Mike.
Boy, you guys are slow.
Hello. Mike. Second by Rich. All right, so on the motion to adjourn, Mary,
Yes.
Mike,
Yes.
Linda,
Yes, thank you.
Rich,
Aye.
and Keith, aye. So we are adjourned at 6:21 PM and thanks all for being here today. We got a lot done.